Midnight presses against the shutters like a living thing. You stand inside a stone chamber beneath the market square of 14th century Paris. The air smells of tallow smoke, wet wool, and something sweeter, too sweet. A copper bowl sits on the table before you. Inside it, a dark powder ground fine as ash. The apothecary whispers that it will make him burn for you, that he will ache, that he will forget his vows. The powder looks harmless. Most poisons do. A candle gutters. Wax drips like slow tears. Somewhere above, a church bell marks the hour, as if God keeps receipts. You dip 2 fingers into the bowl. The texture is gritty. There are flecks in it that catch the light. The apothecary tells you it is a recipe copied from an older manuscript, older than the Malleus Maleficarum, older than the Church's newest paranoia about women who know herbs and women who know men. He doesn't tell you the flecks are powdered lead. He doesn't tell you there is dried blood in it too. You stir the powder into wine. Here is what matters. In medieval Europe, desire was never just desire. It was jurisdiction. It was property law. It was theology. Your body belonged to your husband, to your father, to your confessor, and inconveniently, to God. The church had strong opinions about what you could feel and when. So naturally, people went looking for shortcuts. Love potions were everywhere. In 1322, the Archbishop of Toulouse issued warnings about philtre, magical drinks meant to inflame a lust or secure loyalty. Court records from England mention women accused of mixing herbs and bodily fluids into ale to bind reluctant lovers. The line between medicine and magic was thin as parchment. The line between potion and poison was thinner. You live in a world that believes heat lives in the blood. That lust is a humoral imbalance. That too much cold makes a man impotent and too much heat makes a woman hysterical. So you add warming agents, ginger, cinnamon, crushed nettle, sometimes Spanish fly scraped from blister beetles. A medieval Red Bull, if Red Bull could make your organs shut down. Dry sarcasm aside, people swallowed this stuff. Spanish fly contains cantharidin. It irritates the urinary tract. It causes swelling. In men, that swelling could mimic arousal. It also caused bleeding, kidney failure, and death. Small detail, you lift the cup. The wine smells metallic now. You imagine his lips on it. You imagine the change in his eyes. You imagine power sliding back into your hands. Because here's the truth. In a society that polices female desire, a love potion is not just lust. It is rebellion. It is leverage. In 1384, a woman in London named Marjorie was brought before an ecclesiastical court for using charms to retain the love of a married man. The record survives in fragments. She claimed it was only herbs. The priest called it witchcraft. Her neighbors called it desperate. You call it survival. The apothecary coughs. He is missing 2 teeth. His fingers are stained black from grinding minerals that no human body should ever meet. He learned his craft from a Jewish physician expelled from the city decades earlier. Knowledge travels even when people are forced to. You ask him what else is in the powder. He smiles. That is never a good sign. He says there is mummy. Yes, mummy, imported from North Africa. Dried human flesh scraped from ancient corpses, ground and sold across Europe as medicine. Apothecaries believed it cured bruises, epilepsy, and sometimes heartbreak. Because nothing says romance like ingesting the dead. The trade in mummy peaked between the 13th and 17th centuries. It was called mummia. Wealthy households kept it in jars. Physicians prescribed it for internal bleeding. Lovers slipped it into wine. You look at the bowl again. You are about to feed him lead and corpse dust, and you hesitate. Because sometimes the potion worked, and sometimes it killed. A nobleman in Florence dies after drinking a tonic meant to restore his virility. His widow swears it was saffron and honey. The physician finds heavy metals in his vomit. No one says the word murder. They say imbalance. They say God's will. You know better. The bell above rings again. You think of confession. of kneeling in the dark, of telling a priest you tried to bend another soul to yours through powder and blood. He would call it sin. He would not call it understandable. You lift the cup, and for a moment, you realize something worse than poison. What if it works? Because love that comes from fear, from chemical fire in the veins, from kidneys slowly failing in the dark, is not love. It is control. You step toward the stairs, wine in hand, heart pounding like a drum before execution. And you do not yet know which of you will be buried first. The cup trembles. He reaches for it, and you let him drink. The church, the body, and the war on heat the next morning. He does not die. Not yet. Instead, he wakes flushed. His skin burns to the touch. He pulls you close with a hunger that feels almost supernatural. You tell yourself it worked. You tell yourself the apothecary was a genius. You tell yourself you are powerful. You do not tell yourself he has blood in his urine. Let me explain the battlefield you are standing on. Medieval theology, shaped by thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, argued that sex was permissible only within marriage and only for procreation. Pleasure was tolerated, barely. Female pleasure was suspect. Too much enthusiasm implied moral rot. A wife who desired too openly could be accused of manipulation, even witchcraft. The church regulated marriage contracts, annulments, and sexual conduct. Ecclesiastical courts handled cases of impotence. Yes, there were trials where men had to prove they could perform. Midwives testified. Beds were inspected. Privacy was a rumor. So aphrodisiacs became weapons. If a husband could not perform, a wife might seek remedies. Garlic, rue, honey, wine infused with animal testicles. If he could perform, but would not, that was a different problem. Enter the potion. Clerics wrote sermons condemning love magic. The 12th century theologian Gratian included discussions of magic in his decretum, framing it as interference with divine order. Later, inquisitors would take it further. By the late 15th century, manuals like the Malleus Maleficarum claimed women were especially prone to using spells to inflame or destroy male sexuality. According to its authors, women were weaker in faith and stronger in carnal appetite. Convenient theory. If a man strayed, blame the woman with herbs. You watch him pace the room now, sweating. He laughs too loudly. He grips the edge of the table as if it might float away. His pupils are wide. He reaches for you again. There is a desperation in it that feels less like passion and more like drowning. You tell yourself this is what you wanted. Here's the irony. The same church that condemned love potions also sanctioned relics. Bones of saints, vials of blood, scraps of hair, all believed to heal or inspire devotion. Grind up a pagan corpse and it's medicine. Grind up a Christian saint and it's holy. Context is everything. And then there is lead. Lead sweetens wine. The Romans knew that. Medieval vintners used it too. It makes sour wine taste rich. It also destroys the nervous system over time. Chronic exposure leads to abdominal pain, confusion, seizures. Acute exposure can kill. When you mix powdered lead into wine as an aphrodisiac, you are not just flirting with sin. You are flirting with slow neurological collapse. He grips his stomach. You notice the first tremor in his hands. You remember a story whispered in the marketplace about a woman in Cologne accused of poisoning her husband with a fertility draught. He grew erratic, violent, fevered. When he died, she was blamed for witchcraft. No one tested the metal cups they drank from. No one questioned the apothecary. Women were easier to burn than bad chemistry. You sit beside him. You feel the heat radiating off his skin. He presses his forehead to yours and whispers that he cannot stop thinking about you, that his mind is fire. You should feel victorious. Instead, you feel afraid. Because the line between aphrodisiac and toxin is not a line at all. It is a blur of superstition, half-learned science, and desperation. And here is the deeper layer. These potions thrived because official channels denied people agency. A wife could not easily leave a cold marriage. A lover could not openly pursue a married man without risking public shaming. So they turned to powders and prayers. They tried to hack the system with whatever tools they had. Was it wrong? Yes. Was it understandable? Also yes. He stumbles. The tremor worsens. You realize the apothecary never gave you a dose. He gave you a handful and a smile. Outside, the cathedral bells ring for midday prayer. You imagine confessing. You imagine saying you only wanted him to love you. The priest would ask why you did not trust God. You would want to ask why God designed a world where love required strategy. He collapses to his knees, and suddenly the room feels smaller. Much smaller. Blood, binding, and the price of desire. You kneel beside him. His breath comes in shallow pulls. His skin is pale now, the earlier flush draining into something gray. You press your hand to his chest. His heart is racing like a hunted animal. You think of blood. Because blood was the most intimate ingredient of all. Across medieval Europe and into early colonial America, menstrual blood was rumored to have binding power. Mixed into stew or wine, it was said to ensure loyalty. Some believed it strengthened desire. Others believed it caused madness. There are references in 15th century German trial records to women accused of feeding men bread kneaded with their own bodily fluids. The logic was sympathetic magic. What comes from the body controls the body. The church called it abomination. You call it risky. In the 16th century, during the early waves of witch hunts in territories of the Holy Roman Empire, women were interrogated about love charms that included blood, hair, nail clippings. The fear was not just about sex, it was about control. If a woman could influence male desire, she could destabilize inheritance, property, lineage. Desire threatened order. You remember hearing of the trials in Bamberg and Würzburg decades later, where confessions extracted under torture included stories of erotic spells and potions. The accused often repeated what interrogators wanted to hear. But the obsession with sexual magic was real, because sexuality was political. In early American colonies, particularly Puritan New England, authorities prosecuted cases of fornication and adultery with grim seriousness. While love potions appear less frequently in official records, folk practices persisted quietly. English traditions crossed the Atlantic. Charms traveled in pockets in memory. You look at him now and wonder whether your act is any different from the systems that cage you. He groans. There is blood at the corner of his mouth. Lead poisoning can cause gastrointestinal bleeding. Cantharidin can cause blistering of internal tissues. Mummy powder carried bacteria and contaminants. Medieval quality control was not exactly FDA-approved. Dry thought. Dark humor. It does not help. You think of a story told about a noble woman in 15th century Italy who slipped a virility potion into her aging husband's drink to secure an heir. He died within a week. She claimed it was rosemary and figs. The physician noted strange discoloration in his gums. The case vanished from record. Wealth can erase many sins. You are not wealthy. If he dies, there will be questions. You try to rouse him. You whisper his name. You promise you will fetch a physician. But physicians of this era treat symptoms with more metals, more bloodletting, more imbalance. You think of confession again. Would absolution undo chemistry? Would repentance flush lead from his veins? He opens his eyes briefly. They are unfocused. He grips your wrist with surprising strength. He asks what you gave him. You hesitate. Because to say love potion sounds childish. To say poison sounds accurate. You tell him it was wine. He laughs weakly. Then he coughs. Outside, the sky is bruising toward evening. Shadows lengthen across the stone floor. The candle burns low, the flame trembling as if it too senses consequence. Here is the part no one writes in the recipe books. Desire is not something you can distill without cost. You wanted power in a world that denies you agency. You reached for the tools available: herbs, metals, blood, the dust of the dead. But power without knowledge is just a different kind of helplessness. He tries to stand and fails. You hear footsteps in the street below, voices, ordinary life continuing as if nothing is happening. If he dies, they may accuse you of witchcraft. If he lives, he may accuse you of betrayal. Either way, you have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. You hold his head in your lap. You whisper a prayer you barely believe. And as his breathing slows into something dangerously thin, you realize the most terrifying possibility of all. This was never about love. It was about fear. And fear has a body count. His fingers loosen. The candle goes out. And in the darkness, you are no longer sure whether you have created devotion or a corpse. The apothecary's ledger. You run, not out of guilt, out of instinct. The alley behind the house smells of rain and rotting cabbage. Paris at dusk is a cathedral of filth. You keep your hood low and your breath shallow, as if the night itself might testify against you. He is not dead. Not yet. You left him alive, barely, his pulse thin as thread, his lips stained darker than wine. You told the servant to fetch a physician, and you slipped away before questions could take shape. Now you push open the crooked door of the apothecary's shop. The bell above it gives a tired ring. Inside, shelves climb the walls like ribs. Glass jars hold powdered bone, dried beetles, amber resin, and a slab of something brown and fibrous labeled mumia. A skull sits near the window. It might be decorative. It might be inventory. The apothecary looks up from his ledger. You do not sit. You do not greet him. You slam your palm on the table. He listens while you describe the fever, the tremors, the blood. He does not look surprised. He flips through his ledger calmly, as if checking a bread order. Here's what matters. Apothecaries in medieval Europe occupied a legal gray zone. They were not physicians who studied at universities like Bologna or Paris. They were tradesmen. They compounded remedies prescribed by doctors. They also sold things doctors pretended not to know about. In cities like Florence and Paris, apothecaries were regulated by guilds. Officially, they were forbidden from selling poisons without oversight. Unofficially, money made things flexible. He says you use too much. You stare at him. He shrugs. Lead, he explains, must be measured. Spanish fly must be scraped thin. Mumia must be purified. Purified how, you wonder? With prayer? You ask why he did not warn you. He closes the ledger. Because you did not ask. That answer sits in the room like smoke. He reminds you that love potions are not guaranteed. They are experiments. Medieval medicine was built on the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. If desire is cold, you add heat. If it is dry, you add moisture. Simple theory. Catastrophic execution. He says the body is unpredictable. You want to hit him. Instead, you ask if there is an antidote. He hesitates. There are purges, emetics, bleeding, vinegar mixed with charcoal. But once metal enters the bloodstream, it does not negotiate. He suggests prayer. You almost laugh. In 1307, during the suppression of the Knights Templar by Philip IV of France, confessions were extracted under torture that included bizarre charges of ritual and corruption. The lesson is simple. When authorities want a narrative, they will build it. If your lover dies and someone whispers love charm, the story writes itself. Witchcraft. Adultery. Murder. You ask him how many have died from his powders. He does not answer directly. He gestures to the jars, to the shelves, to the business that continues. He says desire is profitable. You realize then that aphrodisiacs are not just about lust. They are an economy, a market built on insecurity. Men fearing impotence, women fearing abandonment, couples fearing childl, ess. Fear sells. You tell him he must help you. He studies you carefully now, not as a customer. As a liability, he says he can visit under the guise of checking on a patient. He can suggest bleeding to draw out excess heat. He can recommend cold compresses. He can say it was spoiled meat, but if the man dies, he was never here. You understand. Outside, church bells begin to toll for vespers. The sound bleeds through the walls. You think of the sermons preached against lust, against women who entice, against charms and spells. The church condemns the practice, but it also creates the pressure that feeds it. Forbidding open desire does not kill desire. It just drives it underground. You agree to his plan. As you leave, your gaze lingers on the jar of mumia. You ask where he gets it. He tells you traders bring it from Alexandria. That sometimes it is real Egyptian corpse. Sometimes it is the body of a criminal dried in the sun. Sometimes it is just asphalt and lies. In other words, you might not even have poisoned him with ancient royalty. You might have poisoned him with a thief. You step back into the street. The sky is black now. Torches flicker along the walls. Somewhere in the distance, someone laughs. When you return to the house, the physician is already there. He has opened a vein in your lover's arm. Blood drips into a basin. The physician declares there is too much heat in the body. Too much blood. He speaks confidently. Authority loves confidence. You stand in the corner and watch as the basin fills. You wonder if draining him will save him. Wonder if draining him will finish what you started. The physician orders cold cloths. He mutters about imbalance. No one mentions poison. Not yet. Then the bleeding does not stop. And for the first time, you see real fear on the physician's face. The basin overflows, and the floor begins to stain. Confession and combustion. By morning, he is alive. Barely. The bleeding slowed. The fever dipped. He lies pale and hollow, as if something essential has been siphoned out. The physician credits his skill. You credit luck, but rumors move faster than recovery. A servant saw the apothecary enter. Another noticed you slipping out the night before. In medieval towns, privacy is fiction. Walls have ears. So do wells. By afternoon, a whisper has found its way to the parish priest. You are summoned. The church is colder than the street. Incense thickens the air. You kneel in the confessional. Wood between you and the man who will decide whether your act is sin or crime. He asks what troubles you. You could lie. You could say nothing. Instead, you sought to increase affection. You do not say poison. He asks, how did you say herbs? He asks which herbs. You hesitate. That hesitation is louder than any confession. He sighs. In 1486, when the Malleus Maleficarum was published by Heinrich Kramer, it argued that women used potions to inflame men's lust or render them impotent. It insisted that such acts were not mere superstition, but evidence of diabolical pact. The book would not gain full papal endorsement, but it would shape imagination for centuries. The priest you kneel before has likely heard those ideas echoed in sermons. He asks if you used blood. Your silence answers. He tells you that interfering with a man's will is a grave offense, that marriage is sacrament. That desire must be ordered toward God. You almost say that desire rarely listens to sermons. Instead, you lower your head. He assigns penance, fasting, prayer, public, contrition if the man dies. Public. The word tastes like ash. Outside the church. You feel eyes on you. In the marketplace. Women glance away. Men look too long. Here's the brutal irony. Men could and did use aphrodisiacs too. Recipes survive in Arabic medical texts translated into Latin during the 12th century. Works by physicians like Avicenna discussed substances believed to enhance virility. Elite men had access to medicalized versions of the same dangerous compounds. But when something went wrong, suspicion tilted toward women. You return home to find him awake. Weaker. Changed. He looks at you differently now. Not with heat. With confusion. He says he remembers fire in his veins. He remembers wanting you beyond reason. He remembers pain. He asks again what you gave him. You tell him the truth this time. His expression hardens. You see calculation replace affection. In medieval law, poisoning was among the most serious crimes. Even suspicion could ruin you. In some regions of Italy and France, convicted poisoners were executed brutally. The idea of hidden toxins terrified societies already obsessed with invisible sin. He says he will not accuse you. Not yet. He asks why you did it. You could say love, but that word feels smaller now. You say you were afraid he would leave. He studies you in silence. Then he says something colder than anger. He says he would have left anyway. The words land heavier than any verdict. Outside, clouds gather. Thunder rolls across the sky. Dramatic, yes. But weather has always loved a scandal. That night, lightning strikes near the edge of town, and someone whispers that God is cleansing impurity. By the next day, 2 more women are rumored to have used charms. One is dragged before magistrates. The fire is not literal yet, but it is warming. The fire that follows you wake to shouting. The woman from the edge of town has been arrested. She is accused of bewitching a merchant's son. He suffered seizures. He foamed at the mouth. The apothecary's powders are mentioned. So is menstrual blood. So is envy. Evidence is thin. Fear is thick. In the late 5th, 10th, and 16th centuries, waves of witch trials would sweep parts of Europe. Not every town burned women. Not every accusation led to execution. But the logic was consistent. If something disrupted social order and could not be explained cleanly, magic was a convenient answer. Sexual magic was particularly dangerous because it implied agency. You walk through the crowd gathering near the magistrate's hall. Faces tight, voices low. You feel the weight of what you started, or maybe what you participated in. Because love potions did not create this fear, they revealed it. Inside the hall, the accused woman stands trembling. She denies everything. She says she only brewed tea. She says the merchant's son had always been sickly. The magistrate asks whether she ever wished him to love her. She does not answer quickly enough. The crowd murmurs. You recognize the pattern. Desire becomes crime. Fear becomes spectacle. You glance toward the apothecary. He stands at the back, expression unreadable. His trade continues regardless of verdicts. If one woman burns, another will still seek him in secret. You realize something chilling. The system needs both the sin and the punishment. Without forbiddance desire, there is no sermon. Without transgression, there is no authority. The accused woman is taken away for further questioning. Questioning in this era can mean sleep deprivation. It can mean ropes. It can mean pain calibrated to produce confession. You think of your lover lying weak in bed, of the blood in the basin, of the priest's warning. You think of the powder in the chalice, and you see the full circle. You tried to control desire because the world denied you choice. The world responds by tightening its grip. He survives. Weeks pass. His strength returns slowly, but something between you has calcified. He touches you less. He watches you more. Trust, once fractured, does not heal with herbs. The woman from the edge of town confesses under pressure. She admits to charms, to powders, to whispered names in the dark. Whether those confessions are truth or torture speaking, no one asks too hard. Sentence is pending. You stand at your window one evening and watch smoke rise from a distant field. A test fire, someone says. To dry wood. You know what it is rehearsing. Here is the haunting part. Centuries later, we will mock medieval love potions as superstition. We will laugh at Spanish fly and mummy powder. We will call them primitive. But people will still chase chemical shortcuts to desire. Different names, cleaner bottles, better marketing. The impulse remains, to control love, to force it, to secure it against loss. You close the shutters. In the darkness, you feel the echo of that first night. The powder between your fingers, the thrill, the fear. You wanted to bend the will of another human being. The world wanted to bend yours. Both succeeded. And somewhere, in a ledger on a dusty shelf, your purchase is still recorded. Aphrodisiac, quantity, generous. Consequence, unfolding. Outside, the wind shifts. And in the distance, someone begins to scream.